Welcome to the final Belladonna reading of 2020. What a year, what a decade this year has been. This is actually the second installment of a Zoom-based reading series, which Zoe Tuck and Alma Valdez-Garcia and I kind of put together in a sort of emergency brainstorming meeting back in, I don't know, what was it, May, about how to try to bring our programming online for an online audience and what that might look like. And it has been an improvisation and a delight. And I think a great success, in fact. This is our last reading of the calendar year 2020, but we will be continuing with this format throughout the spring until some semblance of the physical and social world returns, hopefully by fall 2021, we'll see. My name is James Loop. I'm the project coordinator for the Belladonna Collaborative based in Brooklyn. We are a avant-garde poetry press and event series celebrating its 20th, going into 21st year of existence, which is a pretty cool thing. It's a kind of shapeshifter. We've taken many forms and iterations throughout the years, but one thing that has been a mainstay for these past 20 years has been the reading series, which is actually how Belladonna was founded. The reading series, which coincides with a pamphlet publication, which we call Chaplets. And today we are launching a new chaplet by Dodd, number 261 in the series, and a broadside by Cameron Awkward Rich, which we are very excited about both. And I can show you a little image of them. I dropped into the chat our sales page. We're running a flash sale tonight. You can buy these two items together for $20 plus shipping. That's a $5 savings. If the page that you look at will look like this, and we see the beautiful cover of Jay's here and this lovely broadside of the poem Meditations in an Emergency by Cameron Awkward Rich, produced by a new collaborator of ours, Tammy Wynn. And if you buy those today, I will get them in the mail to you this Friday. I just wanted to briefly say thank you so much to Zoe and Alma, our curators for tonight's event. It's been a real process and inspiration learning how to kind of reimagine collaboration and literary activity in this particular totally unique and disorienting climate. And they have been an immeasurable help to me and also the kind of backbone of this series. And also to Rebecca Ramdan, who is our intern this year from Queens College, and who is helping out with all of the stuff that I can't keep my eyes on, which is a lot. And Erin, who I see is in the chat, Erin Magloire, who did the graphics, the lovely poster that you saw for tonight's reading. This reading will be archived on our Pensound page and on our YouTube page for posterity, or for those of us who just couldn't make it tonight. And I also wanted to note a kind of very positive note. I thought Zoe had the idea of converting the admission fee into a sliding scale donation to benefit the Trans Asylum Seekers Network. And we actually succeeded in raising, I think, something like $120 so far for that. I don't know how it works if you're still possible to send a donation, but you could have a look in the Eventbrite info and maybe explore. So now I will turn it over to Alma, who is going to introduce Jay. And after that, Zoe will introduce Cameron. We have two readers tonight. I have invited them to take their time a bit. We know that Zoom readings run kind of quickly and are kind of devoid of the normal social protocols that make space warm. So you can feel free to please applaud in the chat or snap your fingers or however you want to show your appreciation. And I am very happy to be with you all here tonight. So let me now please turn it over to Alma Valdez-Garcia.
Hey everyone, I'm so happy to be here. It feels just so good to be like back in space with everyone. I guess I'll just get started. I tend to write really long intros, so I cut it this time. It's still there, but it's all tied to everything. All right, so this reading especially feels really special to be a part of, because in this one and in all the In-Flux readings, it feels like we're really working on like forming and reimagining like a new way of being together, living together in space in this time that is like forcing us to all be distanced. For me, it really just shows that poetry can be everything. It can move you, it can enter you, it can just be you eating something or listening to something. It's supposed to disrupt the day. Poetry on the fringe is dangerous. It should be. It holds poetry accountable within itself. I recently read a sign that said, respect existence or expect resistance. This remained with me as a reminder that poetry is our own. Our poems are pleasure, a joy of resistance, a legacy of being. Language and words allow us to touch one another. Let us dream of our own tenderness. This isn't the first time that I've been around Jay's poetry, been shaken by it. I first read her work about a year ago when I was actually working a night boat when her book was released. And just like being able to help in that process just like brought me into it all. I remember the book launch especially because just the way that you carried yourself and the way you brought your voice into the space. And it just, for me, it just brought this feeling of like recirculating time and energy and just like what we needed. For me, you like entered like with this like collective here, and that's what like really grabbed us. It allowed us to like feel the language as like a solid thing, a solid body. In Jay's work, the body is always jumping, moving, being. We see bodies, specifically the Black body, as a site of light and soul carrying. In an interview, she said, I believe documentation of the body, one's own, and kin is urgent to survival and sustenance. I believe creating new languages and allowances for the body is urgent. We see this in all of her work, this careful remodeling and reshaping outside of our limited dimensions and definitions. It's a way of claiming desire and abundance. It shows the body as language that we've been forced away from through death, time, and forgetting. All right, so for intros, I kind of like to engage with the works. So usually I write a golden shuffle kind of based off of them. So I actually did one off Jay's poem, America's Love Language is Evasion. And the line is, tragedy has never been a dialect in English. Light thirsty tragedy eats through our need for sustenance. Who has not been fed tonight? We are never granted our dimension jumping because we have been told to keep working, buying, eating all we can. A complete dialect of disregard and injustice in our bloody English. All right, and now I'm actually gonna get to it. I'll read her bio now and we'll get started. The subject, known as J. Dodd, aka Redacted, aka Lady Tournament, beamed down in Los Angeles in 1992 and is now based in Portland, Oregon. Her professional literary career includes positions at The Offing, Winter Tangerine, and more, with features in the LA Times, Poetry Magazine, Oprah Magazine, Miss Magazine, Willamette Weekly, the New York Public Library, and several anthologies. She's the author of Mannish Tongues and The Black Condition, featuring narcissists. Her film and performance work has been installed and screened across the country, from classrooms to museums. She's been a Lambda Literary Fellow, a Precipice Art Grant recipient through Portland's Institution of Contemporary Art. She is the mother of Tournament House, a boutique ballroom house in Portland Kiki scene, where she manages and produces young Black, queer, and trans artists. Find her talking slick or in another dimension. All right, I will give it up now.
Hi. Oh, Can you hear me? Yes. Great. Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am truly blessed to be here and also so honored to be here with Cameron. I am such a fan of his work and like truly a guiding light for me in the scene and in this community for years, even since before I came into my own truth. And so I'm really honored to be here and share space. And thank you to all the people who are here in the chat and watching, both who I know and don't know. It is a huge honor. That introduction was so glorious. I'm going to change my opening poem. I'll read the poem that you built that beautiful response to. And I am excited for this reading and these poems to be in the world the way they are, because I don't often love writing about the present time with a sense of urgency, because time is so moving and so fleeting, and we've been here so many times before. What's the point? And so when I do try to write about my present time or my present reality, it is to locate it in my body and myself, because the larger context is so repeated and so known already. What else can we see here? America's love language is evasion. Telling my mommy I'm alive and not mad. Telling my dad it's more complicated, but to send money. Telling my sister she's always known I've been this way. Telling my children to carry less but be ready. Telling my pup the leash is long enough. Telling my night owl all the ways I want to sing. Telling my demigod the donuts of my choosing. Telling my dealer they are the true healthcare system. Telling my housemate to get a new bed immediately. Telling my internet wife we're in this dirty dish dystopia together. Telling the Los Angeles Times I'm gonna try to be a hot bitch. All while ignoring the revival of star counting and drone eating, no contact deliveries and rides for my children, overdrafting my account. Sobriety didn't save me money. I gave away a salary in a summer and I'm still hungry now. But every man, woman, and child of whoever the fuck could end this hasn't and won't. Instead of loving me for saluting him each day, a man gave me a knife. Now, unsheathed, I white knuckle the hilt, the blade at his throat as he wants it. They all want this, blood boiling. I'm just hot and heavy for a chest to lay on. I confess how I am touched and regret the jurisdictions of reciprocity. I can't look any sweetness in the eye with this kind of fluster. The tri-weekly car caravan cycle. The white folks screaming the names of dead Black folks somewhere else. The police are on record saying they don't understand why folks haven't given up yet. The polls say everyone is tired. I'm in that number. I'm not voting. The last time made me want to die. Nobody died for the right to settle. We kill and incarcerate and divorce more than anyone. Tragedy has never been a dialect in English. I live in Portland, Oregon, which is an anarchistic jurisdiction. For those who don't know, the current sitting president, just hates it over here. Though our mayor loves cops. So what's he worried about? No clue. I also really, really got obsessed and concerned and paranoid about how many drones there would be over Portland at any given time, because for the summer and to this day, there are still at least one, if not three drones over the city. I also really love astrology. This is beginner's astrology for anarchistic jurisdictions in a pandemic. It opens with a bit of scripture. They are a nation without sense. There is no discernment in them. Deuteronomy 32:28. The stars are further away. The flicker we see from them bend. The pin drops above the city are drones. From my driveway in north, I see at least 3 each night. I have to count them each night. Most nights, they are accompanied by surveillance planes. I watch military aircraft change shifts in the sky above my house. I celebrated my first birthday in quarantine, and I don't remember anything that happened. The moon cycles around the militant specks over the skyline. There have been riots blocks away. Brutalists escalate dissent with brutality. Brutalists escalate dissent of brutality with brutalism. The mayor of Portland bans tear gas after bombing a neighborhood, and wildfire smoke covers the metropolitan. I just stopped checking the air quality index every day. The mayor of Portland bans the use of tear gas, and the sheriffs and state officers refuse to help local police. The local police want to take over the war crimes. The smoke has cleared for now, and we can see stars again. I tattooed myself in the star on my thigh, upgraded my mask. My Saturn is returning. At the end of every month, I have to see which frequency this sadness is playing on. The hormone cocktail tunes in its own sense. Is it the rain drenching? Is it grief? Again, a shade of its own gift. The tender hits different. The night says, come hither, but the block stays viral. I miss the streets. But the armed and unmarked maneuver, malicious in plain sight. I understand the use of North Star. For a while, I could see her from my bed. The quickest way to get me to talk is about the weather. All I ever said was it made me feel away. Nationalism breeds the anxiety of local catastrophes. I feel like my homeland's fires are following me. Last night, the whole city was covered in smoke. I still smoke cigarettes despite the air. Close friends know about the tranquilizers in my purse. A cop finds a dead end and made eye contact. This is my first sober natural disaster, waking before dawn to see a blood sun peering through ash. I'm getting out of town to see the breeze. Above, an unseeable entity vibrates the entire block. There's like military plane demonstrations. There were during the summer, like random mornings, like 10 o'clock in the morning, I would see like two jets just flying over the city, like circling each other, you know, casual. Anyways, my daughter is also a poet, and so she wrote something beautiful, and I responded to it. This is for my princess tournament. The title is Sisyphus Says Relax. My daughter asks how to pronounce deconstruction. I teach her a dialect of weight. How can I tell my children not everything hurts? The truth is, I've woken up many a morning emptier than the night before and still heavy. I'll say my labor tumbles and decomposes to the root and detritus that made me. If this is the hill I am to die on, at least it'll be higher ground. I'm gonna read maybe two more new pieces and then read some pieces from the chapbook and then be done with this wonderful time. I have been, yes, okay. This is 9/29/2020. You'll get it. The last thing I read before bed is the pandemic has 1 million confirmed kills. And I know better than to believe that number. And how am I to sleep? I ask again to all the evil tucked tight in 1,000 count thread sheets. And I want to burn down Jeff Bezos' estate for not delivering the toilet paper overnight as I asked. But they say 1 million people died because that's how many they can quantify by the virus. But gun sales have spiked and everyone is more clinically depressed. And the physiology of all of it remains a secondhand horror story. What if there are no death songs in this nation's songbook? Inmates at Rikers Island have been preparing mass graves since March. The outbreaks in prison are not a profitable news story. We lost a generation to prison. We are losing a generation to screens. Surfaces were overestimated. What's contagious is airborne. All our ballots are diseased and filled with ideations. No. I'm going to read, I'm going to read these, these last two from this new work, and then I'm going to go to the chat, some things from the chat. I'm really proud of this piece. I've been navigating some, like, youth, love, woman, sort of mapping my womanhood from earlier parts than when I sort of realized it and sort of mapped how I was read and coded through womanhood before I even had the language for it. And so I've been identifying this like prototype of a friend I've had through my life as my ex-husband. I've had these like, it's basically cisgender, heterosexual white men be very close to me and want all of my time and attention, and I give it to them throughout my entire life without or with very limited sort of like sexual intimacy, but a lot of emotional labor on my part. And so they all ended in these dynamic and destructive ways. And so it happened as recently as this summer. So I'm just saying, I have a lot of ex-husbands and I've been calling them that. And this is a poem sort of beginning to map some of this work. It's called Crank 2, which is based on a movie, but that's all I'll say for now because I give it to you. Crank 2, it's in 2 parts. 1, the first R-rated movie I saw legally as an adult. The first version of my first ex-husband took me, along with his new girlfriend when he was visiting us from college. My friends know him as the prototype. The first cigarette I smoked on the dock downtown was with his friends, my first joint in his car, my first beer by his hand. It all feels the same. I love the rush, indescribable and illicit. I've made contour from scraps of desire, collaged installations none of my husbands will see. For those unfamiliar with the mid-2000s Crank film franchise starring international action star Jason Statham, the premise is simple. An indescribably unkillable white man runs around Los Angeles, pumping his heart with adrenaline in the original and pure electricity in the sequel, long enough to stay alive, for the cure to poison, and then to obtain his stolen heart, respectively, both taking solidly 90-minute jaunts. Since my first love introduced me to vice, each after offers something new to put in my mouth, to try. I've never seen the first Crank, didn't choose to see the second, yet it instilled in me a want for the unkillable man. My most recent ex-husband joked I could write a memoir recounting every time he almost died, and I never understood why he worried when, My most recent ex-husband joked how I could write a memoir recounting every time he almost died, and he never understood why I worried when he didn't come home for days without calling. The only time my most recent ex-husband touched me was on New Year's because my chest had finally started to come in and I was only wearing a bra underneath my coat and he had enough mushrooms. Not a single man I love can deny that I'm special. I've been offered shelter and trips just for keeping a kind company. I'm always allowed to spoil the men in my life, and again, I frame myself as guilty of rot. Or the sweetness I so desperately deify is eroding the cavities of my hardest to reach places. My palate has been without liquor for 2 years. Other vices remain. I've been without my most recent ex-husband for 3 months. I've been on hormones for a year. I rented Crank 2 to be 17 again and hoped Jason Statham would keep his heart beating long enough to save me from my first third-wheel drive. I still seek high voltages in my bloodstream. My first ex-husband's new wife fell asleep halfway through, and I didn't have the language of jealousy, just the craving. 2, the only Black woman to appear in Crank 2 appears ass first, occupying the foreground of the establishing shot with ice cubes being melted on her booty cheeks by temporarily unnamed white hands, while Mortal Kombat plays on the TV in the background. Her name is Chocolate, and she is fine as hell. She is a sex worker. The white man hands introduced on her backside belong to the protagonist ad hoc doc. I am omitting the worst parts of Chocolate's brief choreography as her interludes are truly the glue holding the plot together. The feature-length fuck fantasy, I forget how much I couldn't stomach over a decade ago. I didn't choose the movie, still, I regret I forgot her. Chocolate's pivotal act was seducing the geriatric patriarch of a gang family that stole the protagonist's miraculous strawberry tart, meaning heart. In one of the few moments of dialogue, the elderly target of street espionage says, "Don't you always say how you want to settle down, baby?" She leads him to his death. Okay. This is a poem after a friend and inspiration, Ricky Laurentis. It is also a poetry form called the Torah Sonnet, which I created. The Torah Sonnet, just for, I guess for the record, the number of stanzas, the number of lines, and the number of syllables per line all have a relationship. Real is not wild, apparently, but each wind I walk on still feels chaotic. Maybe the word I seek isn't chaos, but combustion, which still subsists on air. There isn't a day my atmosphere flows unnoticed, each errand punctuated by others' attempts at acclimating. I only nap in joy. I wake to wade into abyss waist deep. A current flows within me. I regulate with 6 pills a day. I've begun telling women I can see them. All the questions brimming under the, wow, you look great. Ma'am, I know. Each step away from home begins pageants of surveillance. All my trophies remind me of loss. Okay, I'm going to read 2 poems from the chat and call it a day. Thank you all again for this time. I'm going to read the poem that was previewed. Race Isn't the Elephant in the Room, part 1 and 2. Part 1 I wrote years ago on, yes, some of the poems in the chat, if you do want to buy it, you should. Include poems from a digital chapbook I released years ago called Americana. I moved from Detroit to California in a 50-hour train ride, and it was a lot. And so I wrote about it. And so some of those best poems I have revisited. And this one, I wrote the sort of first half, part 1, on the train, but I've since updated it. Not even for the time, but I just wanted to say more. So, race isn't the elephant in the room. It's the room, the walls, the door, the windows, the furniture, the curtains, the dust, the shadow cast by the daylight, my mouth, your eyes, that glance, that holding of breath, the shifting of weight, the floorboards, the molding, the dust, the bacteria, the air, the outside, the block, the mayoral race, the convenience store, the Lyft, the Uber, the delivery, the nurse at the doctor's office calling me sir or brother, the caravan of white guilt honking 3 times a week, the constant barrage of mild unrest, the tension, and all who occupy it. And last, I'm going to read this poem that I'm finally happy is going to exist in print. I wrote it, I don't know if I had moved out to California yet, but I've been really close to crows since I lived in Boston, since college. Excuse me. And I just I could go on a whole thing, but insert Black poet loving crows rant here. I don't need to do it. This poem was enough. But thank you again for this time. This poem navigates definitely how I sort of navigated my early transition and sort of just like the constant flutterings I feel as a Black trans woman in this world. How a crow survives murder. It's been over 2 years since I transitioned, or a better word is began transitioning. As the familiar song sings, it never ends. Like every other closet I failed to fit in, I only know my body as door unhinged. All my expressions unfurling on the floor. I wanted my first metaphor to be feathers. Instead, I'll collect this failure among them. Molting is useful here because for so long, man felt like parasitic excess, gnawing at the semblances of sense I attempted to make of my body. I wanted to shed all beneath my skin, my frame, my voice, my junk, my mess, or to push this retelling of myself, I begin tearing away the dead structures once necessary for flight. Migration for a creature like me never ends, or I've yet to find the simplest way to walk outside. Each day, I try a variety of plumage. Someone must want this bird's song, my call closest to my chest, melody of a crow's cackle. I have changed my form from beast to fowl. Learned I can still be shot out of the sky, pride of wanting to be outside. I've seen more nights than days. I've made less friends than ever before. I've loved differently and stopped loving better. I haven't been touched enough. I haven't wanted to touch enough about these material desires. I find myself in manic nests unmade by insomniac rustling. The greatest traces I leave are across a horizon of bed sheets. Sorry, ooh, I lost the page. I'm sorry, y'all. I find myself in manic nest unmade by insomniac rustling. The greatest traces I leave are across a horizon of bed sheets. I calibrate the flight pattern I call a gender to be in the same metaphorical species as others are accustomed, or me and my girls are crows. Too often collected to conform the clippings of another wing, too often collected to confirm the clipping of another's wings. In the years since I've begun pecking at my own deadly exteriors, I've lost count of each cousin caught, defeathered, road killed, denied the breeze. In some capacity, this is already my afterlife, the first of many. The process of shedding, remaking oneself anew never ends. I allow the spectacle of any biology explain itself a more devout watcher. If anything can release the talons of being seen as holy as I was divine, I keep all calls ready for the most necessary eulogies. But let's return to murderous behavior. Or it is a known fact crows in the wild perform death rituals, and so do we. Crows warn each other of dangerous terrains, and so do we. Crows are averse to other animals who hold their dead, and so are we. Crows haunt the mythic, their presence of folklore of antagonism, survivors of great flood, we are. Harbingers of the unknown, we are. Thank you all so much. Ashe.
Clap on behalf of the silent clappers. Well, that was incredible. Thank you so much, Jay. I don't really want to talk because I want to think about what I was just hearing, but I just wanted to hop on and in between sets, welcome those who joined late to this very special reading, which is underway. You can purchase Jay's chaplet on our website. You can also purchase the chaplet bundled with the broadside, which we produced for Cameron at the sales page, which I'm going to drop in the chat as well. I also just wanted to speak very, very quickly to the group and remind us that Belladonna is a perennially someone once called us the little engine that could, in terms of the things that we're able to produce on the labor and the money that we do it with. And so, you know, in this spirit of sort of year-end giving, if anyone out there is in the position to make a gift, buy a book for a friend, have a friend buy a book for you, anything like that, all the money goes back into the work. We don't keep any of it. So this would be an especially appreciated time for you to do that. Buy a chaplet, of course. I'm going to go. Goodbye. No, just kidding. Now I'm going to turn it over to Zoe, and Zoe's going to welcome Cameron.
Hi. Can you hear me? Good. Okay. Well, I just wanted to say again that, Jay, that was really lovely. I hadn't really, well, I definitely hadn't seen you read, and that was just such a lovely experience, and I want to read more of your work. And yeah, that was really beautiful. Yeah, so I am here because I asked Cam to read, and so I should be saying something beautiful and smart about his work. You know, Cam's work is beautiful and smart. Yes, no, I'm not going to go on too much. I'm just going to say that I'm very excited that we're in community together. I mean, literal community in that I could, you know, walk down the street and throw a pebble at his window, but I won't. But also, you know, just to feel like we're in a community of poets. And, you know, I just want to take this opportunity to say again how grateful I am for your work, for your poetry, for your presence as just another human in this little blue dot, and also for your like critical mind, which is like a breath of fresh air to me. I know you're not reading critical stuff tonight, but I just love it. It blows. If you know, put a pin in it for yourself later on. When you leave this reading, weeks pass, you see that this critical work comes out by Cameron. Go check it out. Go buy it. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking now. I'm just gonna read the bio. Okay, your torture is over for this time. So thanks, Franny. Cameron Awkward Rich is the author of 2 poetry collections, Sympathetic Little Monsters from Ricochet Editions in 2016 and Dispatch from Persia Books 2019. I actually just had it on my table because it was one of the readings for a class I just did. Okay, presently he is an assistant professor of women, gender, sexuality studies at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. And our next reader for tonight, please clap and click the clapping button.
Thanks, Zoe. Thank you for making my torture relatively brief. And also thank you for always gassing me up in ways that I am unable to do on my own. And also thank you so much for that reading, Jay. It's been, I think, probably literal years since I've heard you read, but your poems are with me always. Okay, I put my poems into a kind of Google Doc in case reading along with me is something that will be useful to you. You let me know if it doesn't work. But I'm going to try very hard not to do very much awkward bantering because Zoom makes it even worse than it usually is. And instead I'm just going to read. I'll say that I'm reading about half poems from Dispatch and half poems that I've written sort of since then, which is embarrassing. So this first poem is a poem that is sort of technically an elegy. I wrote it the day after the Pulse shooting, but it's also a rewriting of a Richard II poem. It's called All My Friends Are Sad and Bright. I think door, and there is. Open, and here's a room where everything you've lost is washed ashore. We've seen the news, we know the story, how even our bodies hurt us sometimes so much. Room of broken mirrors, room of salt, room of marigolds, and it's your party, baby. Here's a crown, here's a gown, and no man just around the corner, all your eyes on you. I think gunflower, and here's a field. Here's a room where every bullet planted blooms, boy with flower, boy with metal rose. What's done is done. What fire affords you? I was a child once. Anything could be my kingdom. All I had to do was say, here's a room of water and gold and nothing else. A room in which a man takes back his blood. Goodbye, blood. Goodbye, stars. Goodbye, dead light troubling the dance your body does all by itself. I was by myself once, beside myself, breath fogging up a window, and what's on the other side? Only everything you wanted. And here's a room of everything you wanted. Think peppermint and myrrh. Think loved, and you don't even have to die. I've made this transition hard for myself. So I'll just say this poem is about, I'll just say this poem is about something different. It's called Long Distance. Long Distance. It's called something nearly unbearable. The room on your computer, inside of which the men shine with sweat and shea. They, the men, are passing another between them like a lit joint, though they the burning paper and he the lips. Plainly, we are in your bed, watching porn, though it's purely academic, everyone merely a student of pleasure. Except for the boy, the wet coin who by now has opened his second toothless mouth, swallowing from both ends, his eyes wide, and then he's gone, vanished into the body's thicket. And so the men, though never touching, do. All four of us, one wooded quiet, carrying his cry. We take a screenshot to remember this. What are we trying to understand? In the morning, I'll fly home. It will be months and months until I am again marked with your scent. I'd given up, resigned myself to the idea of desire. The body, my body, a locked door. Love, if that is your name, I'm a practiced hand. I'm good at waiting. And meanwhile, the sugar maples, miles of them, flushed and damp between us. During this time of the sort of great being inside, I've written kind of a lot of poems that I've jokingly given the name, It Was the Best of Times, It Was the Worst of Times. And this is a title that has I've like sort of retrospectively applied to poems that I've written else before the pandemic. So this is one of these, and I don't think I've ever read this out loud, so I don't know exactly how it will go. But this is, It Was the Best of Times, It Was the Worst of Times, AKA Northampton Pastoral. Beautiful, she says. Forgive me, but you are so beautiful. And not wanting to be seen now for what I am. Dark blot ruining the idol. Smile, say, thank you, it's okay, it's okay. Her hands on my hands, this white stranger in the coffee shop. And later at the polling station, again, so beautiful, bloom red inside, crab apple shadowing the heart. And later at the coffee shop, after hours of reading attentively, look up and there she is, the woman white with a different face. Don't worry, she croons. I think you're going to get an A. And I don't mean to complain. I am a professor, tenure track at the end of the university. I'm paid. Forgive me, I want to say, as I turn the knob to the interior, roam the scarlet hours singing, gather sour fruit. Roam the road in the interior, knob the scarlet hours singing, gather by the bucketful, bloom, harden into bitter little fists, swallow where no one's looking, high in the magnolia, the white oak. When a boy no one could see, though had a name flashing like a coin, did not have the agency to spend, lived an inner life, could not bear the cost, pay attention, walked my body to the water of the world. It was beautiful, a shame, so, so beautiful. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And when I surfaced from the latest weather, torrent of bad wind shuttering the blinds, so that I, or something like me, was lost and wandering again, the stale room where I fear was born, though how, it is impossible to say. When I surfaced, you were talking about children. A man, barely not a child, was dead, murdered, though it was months already between the scene and that name for it. The only way I know to outlast history is running. So that's what I do, I run, even though even this action is a pantomime through which history, we all know it, speaks. A man particular is dead, and in the general body, the particular now, I am careful to keep my distance from the woman who is careful to smile at me in turn. When my father did not die, I didn't know. Nothing happened. And when he told me years later, when the scene found its name, I found something so like certainty it must have been. You don't have to, is what I heard him say to me. Live, you don't have to. Love, forgive me, for I believed it, believe. America is more and less itself than ever. Some days I run until my feet go numb. Some days I am the darkest thing I'll see. So this is sort of a longer one. It's maybe more of an essay than a poem, and it's sort of a joke. But maybe a joke I've taken earnestly, which I think is a predicament of transmasculinity, the propensity to take jokes too seriously. This is called Trans Study, and it begins with an epigraph from Audre Lorde. We begin to give up of necessity, being satisfied with suffering and self-negation, and with the numbness which so often seems like their only alternative. Transsexual is a word my students don't understand how I could want. I get it, I do. No one likes to imagine their heart enabled by capital, power, knowledge, etc. No one wants to know the field first as boundary. Who wouldn't want instead to roam? There's a scene that sits for me at the center of the story. There, not even the moon is cutting through. I'm outside and can't imagine how my body is moving. It's in the groove, not a good thing exactly. The groove is something we fall into, a rut, rutting against. Anyway, I'm outside the room I am inside, which is perfectly ordinary, the trouble. I used to think there was a series of movements, at the end of which, joy. One trouble with the transsexual is the history of her description, at the boundary of the field, a body so alienated from itself it is functionally dead, a monstrous fetter. He lives only for the day when his soul is no longer being outraged by his body, when he can function socially, legally, and sexually. In the meantime, he is often dead to pleasure, to the world outside her head. Take Lord's tiny, intense pellet of yellow coloring perched like a topaz just inside the clear skin. If yellow pellet stands for capacity for joy, then you have to admit that capacity unfolding in and because of war. Likewise, the transsexual unfolds. I is never actually a dead space, I'm trying to convince myself. It wants only what it is possible to want, which is more than we know. I want the word I tell you as a record, a feeling for how the barely possible becomes through feeling a kind of life. In the field, we lie on our backs and watch the sky moving overhead. We sprawl, we holler, we stand quiet as stones in our own pockets. We wander, we roam, we come back home, though in the meantime, the descriptions changed. Tomato, salt, bright sting of the needle, monstera, buttercup, breeze through the summer window, my friends, writing a good poem, moving into the sunlight against the body of a woman I love. Suddenly, rain. Okay, I've decided that I'm gonna skip the next poem in the interest of not reading too many poems. Yeah, this one is called Stone December, and it's from Dispatch, the latest book. Stone December. Except for the blue jay, jabbering for sex, solitary, bright note of sky. Except for the wandering chickens and the guard cats, the lone trees on my side of the street, still somehow ablaze with fall. Except for this whole animal world, I'll talk to no one, no one. Last night, with him inside me, I could remember why I hate it. I wanted to say, you have to make me ask for it. But then it was morning and he was driving me back home. Hush, how can I say this so you'll believe me? It's fine, it's all fine. Perfect skein of my living, brazen, misplaced song. This next one is very short, and it's kind of more of a rant than a poem. It's called Black Feeling. The white boy says to the white boy, you say you think of your art as a public service, but you're underselling yourself. There's such discipline, such stringent rules. I carve in the margins. Have you ever worked in the service industry? Dark voice inside me standing at attention, though I haven't either worked in the service industry. I say nothing, just roll my eyes in his general direction without looking at him at all. The one magic trick I know, transform any statement to a barbed face I show to no one. Now, images of Black children rising against the world is turning beside me. A woman, white in red shawl, gasps, shakes her head. She can't believe it. I can't believe when I was a child, like any child, I understood nothing. The idea of race, the white boy is saying, formed like a wall between me and everyone. Once we were walking, my friend and I, ugly with a rash where she just days ago remade me in her image. I begged, but now doesn't look at me, says we can't do this anymore, she and I, because of the idea of race. Must have been February when these things break into the suburbs where we lived in parallel, but I swear there was so much sun then suddenly. I'm gonna read two more poems. This next one is quite long and is also sort of more of an essay, and the next one is quite short. So this one is also called Black Feeling. And after that, even the whirring of your head goes quiet, even your breath, no sound. Someone in workshop says something like, in Italian, stanza means room. Don't roll your eyes. Here you are in the room. Here you are with things, but no names for things. You've been in this city for weeks now and no one knows your name. No one except the man at the bus stop with his tall boy, his paper bag. When he asks, you tell him you work at the university, you teach. He was a cop till someone died and he found the bottle, or the drink came first and then the falling off this umber world. In this moment, you're a man to him, some kind of boy genius philosopher, who knows. There's something neither one of you can say. You're circling like animals, like prey. The truth is, most Black folk look at you and see a woman. White people look at you and see a reckless boy. Either way, there you are in the room with your body. Everywhere, the bus is a kind of underworld. The man lives there, but you are just a passenger. He clears a space, says, sit. You can't sit. He looks at you with so much gratitude, you think you'll die. You have to understand that there are many rooms. Each of them operates by other laws. Here, once you name a thing, you can't take it back. It has its own life now, one that moves along without concern for you. At first, you go around talking to the trees, and for just a moment, they turn to face you. By the time the bus arrives, the light has gone, and the man is holding out his hand. You take it, not expecting to be thrown against him. Against him, you are years ago, a frantic girl alone. The man is on his knees. You are a boy holding up his brother. The man is on his knees. Either way, there you are in the room with your body, your one wet face. Oh, God of the loophole, of the veil, of the break, the fugitive, and endless flight. Somewhere, there's a room where things go to lose their names. A rose becomes, a daughter becomes, her son. Unlocking your apartment, you realize you never caught his name. He just looked at you and saw a door. He can't walk back through, but there you were, an image racing on the other side. Cool. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and us in this weird digital room. I'm gonna close with a kind of short poem, which is a cento, which means that it is a poem composed entirely of language that I have stolen from other people. And in this case, all of the language is sort of taken from poems written by people who are either my friends or are friends of my mind. It's called Cento, between the ending and the end. Sometimes you don't die when you're supposed to. And now I have a choice. Repair a world or build a new one. Inside my body, a white door opens into a place queerly brimming gold light. So velvet gold, it is like the world hasn't happened. When I call out, all my friends are there. Everyone we love is still alive, gathered at the lakeside like constellations. My honeyed kin, honeyed light beneath the sky, a garden, blue stalks, white buds, the moon's marble glow, the fire distant and flickering, the body whole, bright-winged, brimming with the hours of the day, beautiful, nameless planet. Oh, friends, my friends, bloom how you must, wild until we are free. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cam. That was very moving to me. I wanted to show you all, in case you joined late, the broadside that we made of Cam's poem Meditations in an Emergency. I wonder if it's best to show it like, maybe I can share it with you this way. That will work better. Can you see that? You can buy this on our website. It's by, it was printed by Tammy Wynn, who's a new collaborator of ours. It's about this big. I'm gonna frame mine because I think it would look really nice matted and on the wall. That is all. I always feel like these have to end so surreptitiously because there's no wine to drink or little sandwiches to eat, but I really appreciate being in this space with you all. I feel like the commotion of kind of planning and entering and conducting a Zoom reading is very abstract and strange, but then for the moment when the poetry is happening, you think like, oh yes, like I know where I am and I know what I am doing. And it's a great comfort to me. Personally. So thanks to Zoe and Alma for programming. Thank you so much to Jay and Cameron for that amazing reading. And please visit our website and buy some stuff for yourself and your friends. And that's all I think I have to say.